spent a lot of time here with my family. I am not the sole proprietor of this place. I co-own this with my brother, who's back there with the red beanie. And my younger sister is also back there with that leather jacket, and another sister who's not here because she has 3 children and her life is crazy. But good morning. Okay, round of hands, who has never been to Guelaguetza? Ever? Shame on you guys. Now I know who like the non-LA food people are. So we have been here, well, in this location, we have been here since 2000, believe it or not. But Guelaguetza was founded with my father in 1994. So next year will be 25 years since my dad first started the restaurant, which is crazy to think about. It's like a quarter of the yes! Yeah, isn't that crazy? My father started the restaurant pretty much for nothing. It's the ultimate immigrant story that I think a lot of people have heard, where he just really came with nothing from nothing. I think he had like $150 and 2 liters of mezcal. Back when mezcal was not cool, so that was, that's when like nobody wanted to drink mezcal. And some cheese, some ayudas. He moved in with his sister, and he started sort of selling food from door to door, trying to figure things out. He thought about becoming a gardener, which he was going to become a Mark gardener and move to Fresno, so thank God that did not happen. And he, when you go to Mexico, anywhere in Mexico, selling food in the street is a way of life. It is really a way, it makes more sense for someone who comes from I guess, a lower income community to wake up, make food, open the door, put up a table, and sell anything from juice to tortas, tostadas, to anything, than to go out and find a job, because minimum wage is pretty much non-existent. So a lot of people opt for selling. If you are gifted with that sort of gift of making really great food, selling food in the street is like, that's what you do. But it's also sort of seen as their last resort. So my father, when he was here, he felt so ashamed. He was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm gonna go and like sell food in the street. But necessity, right? Like he needed to send money to his family. And he started doing that on the corner of 8th Street in Normandy. And this was in the early 90s, so MS-13, 18th Street. There was another one called Playboy. There were all these like gangs of cholos, and my dad put up his little stand, and he had to pay rent to the cholos for protection. So they had to he had to pay them. And he said that one day this guy came and ordered up la ayuda, and he left without paying, and he was like, I'm gonna see what this protection can get me. So he told the cholos, he was like, hey, that guy didn't pay me. So they went after the poor guy, brought him back. And I was like, I'm just kidding, no, it's fine, the guy's fine, you don't kill him. So he was like, it really worked, they really did protect me. So, then he saw this little place that was for lease. He decided to go and I bet everything on the place and open a little restaurant. My dad knew absolutely nothing about nothing. Like the first day he opened, he didn't even, number one, have a menu. Number two, how much he's gonna charge people. So he knew he had like 5 things on the menu. One of them was tamal de mole. If anyone has never had it, you definitely need to have it. It's this beautiful masa filled with or mole negro or signature chicken, and it's wrapped in a banana leaf and then steamed. It's absolutely perfect. And one of the ladies who was his first customer walked up in there and said, hey, do you guys have tamales de mole? And he said, yes, I do. And she's like, how much are they? And he's like, hold on. So he went to the kitchen, showed it to her, and said, well, how much would you pay for this? She said, $5. He's like, sold. Great. Tamales de mole, $5. That's how he started his business. And 25 years later, 4 children, we are here. My father retired 5 years ago. I keep saying 5 years ago. I feel like I've been saying 5 years ago for a long time. It might be 6, 7 years ago now. I don't know. But he retired, and now the restaurant is completely run by us. My father was this guy who knew great success and just went crazy. And typical, Mexican macho success, from nothing to everything. And did everything you can think of that would happen to a Mexican macho man, which to his demise ended up him losing everything. And growing up and going through an economic recession where you absolutely, here it is, this little girl, aka me, when my dad's like, Dad, I need money for this. Oh, sure, Mina, here. Obviously always working to having absolutely nothing. Like, lost his home, lost his car, almost lost his wife, almost lost his children, just from nothing. Decided that it was time for him to sort of reinvent his life all over again and understand what life really meant to him, which was nurturing his family, nurturing his wife, going back to where he came from. And he moved to Mexico with my mom. He went back to Oaxaca with my mom. And he closed down. We had 4 restaurants back when my dad sort of was, up here. And he was going to sell this restaurant. He was going to sell the restaurant. We sold the other restaurant. He sold the other 2. And I kind of came into the realization, and I always worked with my dad ever since I was 5 years old, believe it or not. But I always sort of felt like I could always go back. He always figured things out for me at the end of the day. At this time when he was like, no, Bricia, like, this is like not, like, we're really, like, shit's really hit the fan, like, there's nothing. We decided to get together and put a plan together, and he really, like, handed everything off to us, everything that was left. We literally bought the restaurant from my dad, in payments, obviously, because we didn't have any money. And he moved, and it's almost like the never-ending payment, because now it's like we finished off paying it, but we're still. And I think that's in the Latino culture, when we talking about traditions, that's that is what happens in the Latino household, and I think in many cultures, but I think for Mexican culture, taking care of your parents is you have to. It's not even like, oh, like, I don't know what happened to my parents. For us, it's like, and more for us because we have seen what our father did for us. I mean, leave his country, leave his state, leave everything, going to a place. To this day, my dad can't even speak English. So kind of going and seeing what he has done for us, taking care of my parents is an absolute privilege or my biggest sort of accomplishment in life. But the 4 of us got together and realized, okay, what's gonna happen? And I think the best thing that happened was that my dad trusted in us and sort of just let us have our way without him getting involved. So for any of you who, number one, are kind of taking over a family business, or I know that's one of the things I get asked the most, like, but how do you do it? Because my parents don't let me do this, and my parents don't let me do that. And I think to have a successful family business transfer over, there can be a parent looming over every decision you make. You either head off to your kids, or you let them go somewhere else where they can really shine and really develop their attributes and their gifts. So I think that was like the best thing. And my dad was sort of the person that he was so fearless. He was so fearless, and that's one of the things that I wish I was more of sometimes. I think growing up in America, and the comfort of this, like that fear of like you're not gonna have nothing. It's not as looming over you as when you grow up and you really don't have anything to eat. But my dad was so fearless, and he never cared about anything. And I'm gonna share the story that he just shared with me, like last time he visited us. And I never knew the story about this goat. It's a story about my dad, and it just shows how fearless he was and how he just did things he just did things. We have this wonderful drink in Oaxaca called agua de Guelaguetza, and it's an agua fresca of sorts made of squash. So it's a special squash called Guelaguetza, and it's cooked down with brown sugar and cinnamon and anise, and it's this beautiful just goodness with squash, and it's perfect. I'm like, I lost the words. And it's very traditional, and it's only sold in Oaxaca. And my dad was always like, we need to be the representation of Oaxaca. We need to be the place where Oaxaqueños miss Oaxaca, come here and feel like they're back at home. So he couldn't find the squash anywhere. And he went to the central market, and he was like, I need to find the squash. Thankfully, like, the community of Oaxaqueños here was very close-knit, and said, well, I heard of these guys in Oxnard that were growing them, maybe you should go there. So he drove to Oxnard before Google Maps, okay? Think about that. He found Oxnard, he found these guys. Oh, and without a cell phone too. That's crazy, huh? And the guys had these chilacayotas. It was like, oh, this is amazing, perfect. I'm gonna drive here once a week to pick these up. And there were these little goats around because this guy had this farm. And it was my aunt's birthday. And my dad's like, that's so cute, I'm gonna get a goat for my sister. And he's like, oh yeah, well take the goat, you're from Oaxaca, obviously. I'm like, great. So he got there to my tia's apartment and was like, look what I got for you, a goat. And she was like, yay, a goat. Like goat milk and like later kill it and like have barbacoa, awesome. So like this goat was there, and then obviously like animal service, they got called and it's like, there's this goat next door. So my aunt's like, what are we gonna do with this goat? And my dad's like, well, we should just kill it and make barbacoa. It's like, okay, we have to get rid of it before they call animal services. So my dad, we had a butcher at the restaurant, because since day one we've always made our meat, you know, like our chorizo or cecina or tasajo, we've always made it in-house because it's a very special way of making it. So my dad calls the butcher, he's like, hey, get this goat, like, can you like kill it? And the guy said, sure. So my dad took the goat to the restaurant and there was a sacrifice to the gods. But the goat was very loud, obviously. I know, I'm sorry. Bear with me. Also, tradition, remember tradition, it comes from a different place. So obviously someone called the health department and animal services. But our neighbor was so great, and she went and warned my dad, like, they're coming, so, you know, clean up. So they did, and then animal service showed up, and they were like, I heard someone was killing the goat here. And my dad's like, no, sir, no one killed the goat, like, no. So they went, they looked, and then he opened the fridge and was like, what is this? And my dad's like, what's goat meat? And he's like, from where? And I was like, well, I bought it, because we did actually buy goat meat for barbacoa. They were so angry because they couldn't find any evidence. And they still cited him, and he still had to go to court, fend for whatever in to the health department. I don't know where he went. And now you have to imagine, this is a guy who number one doesn't know how to speak English. Number two is new to this country. But he was just like, he could have just been like, no, I'm so wrong, nothing, I didn't do anything. Yes, I did, take me in jail. But he was just like, so like, no, I didn't kill this goat. Like, no, figure this out. So he went, and then, so this is 20 years ago, so I think like, that's like, I'm looking at statute of limitations for that. So, he went to the person, and he's like, sir, did you kill this goat? And the guy said, no, I didn't. My dad said, no, I didn't. And the guy kept asking him, I'm gonna ask you for the 5th time, did you kill this goat? He said, no, I did not. He said, okay, we're not gonna cite you, but you're gonna have to go through a food handling, and this whole array of school, basically, where they're going to teach you about what you can and cannot do in this country. And he's like, but why if I didn't kill this goat? And he said, God, because I'm going to tell you why. And he said, I need you to do well because you pay me, because I have a job because of you. And my dad didn't really understand that. And it's like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you have a business now, right? And he's like, yes, and you pay taxes, right? How do you think I get paid? My paycheck comes from the taxes that your business creates. And for me, if you do well, we all do well in the city. So I need you to get educated and to learn so you can actually become successful. And my dad really impacted my dad. And like when I hear that story, it brings me back to community and how important it is to help everybody out. Because that guy could have easily been such an a-hole and, God giving my dad a citation, and he could have been really just like, over him, but he wasn't. He understood my dad, and I'm sure he knows deep inside that my dad really did kill that poor goat. But he knew that we need humans to help each other out. Like whether you're in power or not, whether you're something, we need each other. We need to create community. And for us, creating a community has always been number one, has always been the number one priority for us. For us, number one was always the Oaxacan community. How can this place become a hub for people to come and enjoy and feel safe, feel like their culture is worth something. Growing up in Oaxaca as a little girl, I feel like Oaxaca now is super cool and super hot. Like there's like a Oaxacan on the cover of Vogue now, and it's like crazy. But back then it was not like that. Growing up as a person from Oaxaca, not even a person of color, it was like a person from an indigenous background, was a very shameful thing. You were taught to never speak your native language. You were taught to speak Spanish. You were basically fed in your brain that all you could ever be was a housekeeper or that's it. That was pretty much all. Like, ooh, what kind of a housekeeper do you want to be? I remember when I was a little girl, I dreamt that I was gonna have a housekeeper union. I was gonna get all the housekeepers together and we're gonna fight for rights. I really did. I even named it. But growing up, for me, creating that community, that's what we always did. We created a community where people that looked like us could feel empowered and could really understand the value of their culture and what that brings. And I think it's so important for creativity purposes to be open to other people's culture, to travel, to understand, and to also embrace where you come from, to learn more about your identity, your parents, your grandparents, because so much of that DNA is inside of who you are. So much of that DNA makes up your creative process every single day. But it's so important that you learn more, because you never know what you're gonna learn or what you're gonna find out about your family, your community, your traditions. And for us, I just feel so blessed that I was able to grow up in a family that valued tradition, that valued culture, that valued family at the end of the day. And of course, we always share that through our food. Our food is I used to say my food is very simple, but we're writing a cookbook. It comes out fall 2019, and there is nothing simple about my food. I can tell you, I was like, I went through this creative process of writing this book, and I had this huge realization about the importance and value of my food. Growing up in LA and being in the food scene, and I have so many great friends who I love and adore who are great chefs, that I kind of got caught up in this idea that my food was just not as good as theirs because they didn't have micro cilantro on top maybe, or it wasn't done with tweezers, or it didn't have cauliflower and all these cool things that chefs were doing, and pine nuts, and it wasn't charred. You know what I'm talking about. And I love that. But trust me, I eat it all the time. But I really thought, like, wow, I wonder if mine is just so simple. I'm just like serving tomatoes, I like charred tomatoes. I don't know. I felt honestly a little bit like it wasn't good enough. And I think sometimes for us, I think about how sometimes the simplest things that we have in life, we forget how beautiful they are because they're there every single day. Whether that's whatever that is for you. I think that's one of the things that we as humans go through. We have so much beauty every single day that we forget to look at it. And we forget to appreciate what we currently have and how much love and time and years it went to be created. And writing this book was sort of a realization that, why is my food not valued as much? Well, maybe it starts with me. And I think it starts with our people, and I'm going to speak from a Oaxacan Mexican perspective. I think that a lot of us look at our Mexican food and maybe are the first ones to complain when it costs above a certain amount, and that certain amount is 99 cents. Like every time a taco is worth, when they sell you a $3 taco, God forbid, you're like, what do you mean a $3 taco? Well, it's a freaking good ass taco, so you should be able to pay for it. And I think it starts with us, and when I say us, I feel like our own culture. As Oaxaqueños, as Mexicanos, to really value what we currently have, because the world is not going to value us unless we don't love ourselves, as long as we don't value what we have. The other day I was at a food truck, and it was, oh my god, it was so good. I mean, honestly, it was also 2 o'clock in the morning, but it was really good. And I told the guy, I'm like, tomorrow you should charge double. And he said, oh no, no one will come. I'm like, oh, believe me, people will come. Because you're serving good food. And good people should pay for good food. And if they want mediocre food, they can go pay less. But you're serving great food, and don't undervalue yourself. And I think that for everyone here, I'm assuming a lot of you guys are creative, sort of either entrepreneurs, freelancers. I mean, if you're here on a Wednesday morning, I'm sure you don't have a 9 to 5. Or, very flexible 9 to 5. But for that, I always tell people you need to understand how much you're worth to give yourself the proper value. And that's one of the things that I see the most of people undervaluing themselves. And that really comes from here first.